in their mesh matrix. All right, just making sure everything's checking out here. Get the understanding of some bitrate situations, and then we will have that complete. All right, today we're going to be talking about something geographically near to me. To give you guys a little background, I'm from this area that we're going to be talking about tonight, and so as a result of that, I have personally been to this crime scene. Not inside the house, of course. The house is actually no longer there. It's a new house that's been built. However, I did get the chance to jump the neighborhood or the gated community fence into Niguel Shores, and I did get a chance to walk up to the address of 33381 Cockleshell Drive where this crime occurred. As far as I've seen, I'm the only person in Iran's research who jumped the fence into this neighborhood. You can see the video and the documentary associated with my excursion that day here on this channel. If you go through my uploads, I'll actually add it to this playlist too, because I'm going to try, at least to some extent, even though this is a read-through of the Quester Files segments on the original Night Stalker, I'm going to be adding other stuff to this playlist and just kind of get this to be a playlist for a repository of information on the original Night Stalker. You can go back through my videos, my uploads, and you'll find a video called Crime Scenes of the Original Night Stalker, Laguna Niguel, California. And that can be considered basically supplemental to this video. And then you can also... We're going to be talking with Thune next after this, not tonight. But we are going to hit Harrington's tonight. And Irvine, to me, is a much more interesting crime scene, but we can talk about some observations at this crime scene and other things as we go through the Quester Files and as we kind of summarize Quester's write-up on this. There were a lot of people in this community that went to the Niguel Shores crime scene area. But they were too hesitant and too, unambitious to actually jump over the gated entrance to the community. I was quite bold that day and approached the Niguel Shores crime scene from its back entrance at the corner of Niguel Road and Selva, I believe. And I jumped over the wall there. Didn't get bothered by anyone, actually. It was pretty interesting. It was very, very quiet neighborhood. But anyway, you can see the documentary on this, on my visit to that crime scene here on this channel. Let's press forward. So the offense is a 261 rape, 187 murder. Actually, like I said, murder with special circumstances, not a 187, and it's a double murder. So, I don't know why he has a case number on there, but the city is Dana Point. The address is 33381 Cockleshell Drive, Laguna Niguel, California. I believe it's a Laguna Niguel address, actually. Could be wrong. Could be Dana Point, but it's really right there on the border. And the date of this crime is August 19th, 1980. Let's continue. There probably is nothing like hot August nights in Dana Point. The cool Pacific blows over the entire southern Los Angeles coast. This was the perfect place to build Niguel Shores. The homes were fairly average middle class, but the location gave the entire area an upscale look and price. Fashionable is the word used. The view at the end of one of the streets, Cockleshell Drive, was breathtaking. Agree with him, by the way. Oh my God. If anyone gets a chance to go see this crime scene, I was shocked at the view that you get from basically the corner of, and I don't know what this main little street is called, but the whole complex is a circle, essentially. It goes around like this, and when you get to the corner of Cockleshell Drive, and that street, when you're standing there, you can see the whole Pacific Ocean, and it's just this very unimpeded view of the horizon from here. So totally correct on that. The corner house here had a gorgeous view of the Pacific on one side and the mountains around San Juan Capistrano on the other. I didn't look that direction. Honestly, I was so, like, it was very surreal, first of all. This had been the third original Night Stalker crime scene I'd been to. And being the nerdy Eron's researcher that I am in this case, to actually be in that location was very strange to me. Because these are crimes I'd been reading about for so long, and then to actually stand there and realize that I was in the location was kind of wild. But the Pacific view that you have looking out past Cockleshell Drive is just mind-blowing. And so I didn't even look around at the mountains that he's talking about. Cockleshell was only a little tributary off the main road. The community was so large that Nigel Shores Road wended over Pacific Coast Highway to the coast itself. There were more cul-de-sacs, like little lagoons off the river. I didn't notice any of this. Really, I was trying to kind of get out of there, because I jumped the fence over to, I love that you've been there, can give it, oh yeah, thanks, channel. Yeah, it's good. I think it helps a lot with going to these crimes, with these locations. I jumped that fence, and it's pretty close. It's all downhill, so if you're coming from Nigel Road and, I guess it's Selva or whatever, I can't remember exactly what that street is. Nigel Road, though. If you're coming from Nigel Road, it's a lot of uphill climbing from there all the way up to the back entrance of Nigel Shores. And by the time I got to that location, jumped over that fence, you go over that wall, or if you're not crazy, you go through the gate like a normal person, and then you just turn right pretty quickly, and it's all downhill from that location, even going past the crime scene house. But I didn't notice any of this stuff about how it goes over the PCH and everything, because by the time I'd seen the crime scene and got a couple good camera angles on it and gotten a little good commentary on it, I was just trying to get the hell out of Nigel Shores before I got in trouble. So it finally stopped near the beach. Everything was gated off. Even the bridge over the Pacific Coast Highway was private. It's a sprawling, huge area, so large that there is more than one type of community in it. Cockleshell Drive was in one roughly circular area of the development, but it was only a block over from the wall to the outside world. Not even that, actually. You can stand at the driveway of Cockleshell, like right here, what you're seeing on your screen here. This is the old house before they rebuilt it. You can stand on this incline, on this little driveway pathway here, and pretty much throw a rock and hit Stonehill Drive. That's what I was thinking of, not Selva. It's Stonehill and Nigel Road. It's so close. It's actually only a small little street, and then one row of houses, and then through those houses' backyard, you would find yourself at the retaining wall that goes down to Stonehill. Okay. Let's see. The low stone wall behind the homes on leeward protected the community from the outside. Perhaps the greatest protection was really the cultivated embankment down to Stonehill Drive, one of the major thoroughfares in Dana Point, Laguna Niguel. Yeah, I mean, he's right about that. He's right about that to the extent where I don't even think Eron's jumped over anyone's backyard. I used to think that before I had been to this crime scene. I kind of thought he had come from Stonehill Drive and crossed through the backyard of the house adjacent to this house. But not so much now. I think he might have just jumped over the back gate because it's very small, and I don't know what it looked like back in 1980. But it wouldn't be hard to do that. It would actually be easier. The Harrington house was on the corner of Cockleshell and Leeward. Okay, so that answers my question about what that other street was called. Despite the fact that someone could climb the embankment from Stonehill Drive and hop through the yard of the homes there and cross the street, there should have been little worry of an intruder. Maybe he did that, but he might have just jumped over the back gate. So I don't know if it had a security guard at that gate. What I saw, and I wish I could put it on the screen, it would be kind of nice, but what I saw was that it was very, very easy to get into Nigel Shores, like unbelievably easy. And this was in broad daylight. I just jumped over the wall and kept walking. No one said anything to me. Who would go to that effort just to try and rob a house? Also, in a gated community with a security guard on it, no one could drive in and out easily to even prowl. All of these thoughts are wrong. They do not take into account that there might be a person who wants to feed not their greed, but their lust for thrill. On Thursday, August 21st, 1980, Roger Harrington, about 62 years old, arrived at the Cockleshell address. He had been invited over for family by his daughter-in-law, Patty. Roger owned the home, but he let his son Keith and his new wife live there while Keith continued his med studies at Irvine. Interesting connection to Irvine there for you. Patty was a sweet girl. Roger always thought so, but he didn't know much about her or her past. Keith had had a pretty good relationship with another woman in pre-med school. It was a surprise when they didn't marry. Keith had decided on UC Irvine, but his girlfriend chose a school back east. The relationship broke up. It was a surprise to the whole family. Roger felt that Keith, only 24, had fallen for Patty on the rebound. She was over 4 years older than him, and as a nurse perhaps had been readily handy. This took nothing away from Patty. All knew she was a sweet person. But they had married in only months after they met, and now in August they had been married only since May. They had not known each other even a year. I got married almost a year ago now, and it's so disturbing to me that these two had only been married for a couple months and then they got murdered. But let's keep moving on. Roger had the money to buy the new house here in Nagel Shores when the development was being built in 1972, but he didn't care to live here. It was good for an investment. It was good for the weekends. He preferred to remain living in the Long Beach area where he had his work. Interesting, too, again, here's another connection to D'Angelo in Long Beach. D'Angelo was living in Long Beach in the 1980s. So. His had made his money in security systems. He had reached out from being flat broke in 1962 when Keith, his youngest of 4 sons, was only 7 to having made millions. Keith and Patty never used the master bedroom in the house. They hadn't planned to stay long, only until Keith graduated in December. The house just doesn't exist anymore. So you can see the location of this crime. But what exists now there is actually this huge fortress. It was being there in person. What's interesting about all these Iran's crime locations is like they are now like fortresses. Withun and Cruz, not so much. I think the original house is still the same there. Stand by while I verify that I haven't been getting loaded. Yeah. Hope it works.
I love your little girl.
Yeah, it's so cool.
So funny. It has a swinging door when you do something. It's like the barn door, you know? That little barn door.
See if I passed.
That's what I thought too. Yes.
I've been drinking on the show, so I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't get it.
The Withun house is the same house, and the Cruz house is the same house too. But you can see, I think, mostly in Laguna Niguel, at this crime scene, it's the house that's now at 3331 Cockleshell Drive is like a castle. And there's security cameras all over it. And I've heard this about some of these other Iran's crime scenes, that there are still bars on the windows and things like that, where people have just basically never recovered from the legacy of these crimes. And so, also, it was Roger's house, and if he visited for overnight, it seemed more appropriate that he should have the master bedroom. Roger had raised his children with a strong sense of family, competitiveness, and drive. He was the patriarch, and he gave each of his son his own middle name of Eli as ostensibly a symbol of union. Roger's father had admired rich men. By the way, I want to say Keith Harrington's brothers are absolute fucking heroes, but we'll talk about them later if I remember. Roger's father had admired rich men, and perhaps he had instilled ambition and competitiveness in Roger. Roger himself looked much younger than he was. He jogged every morning, worked out, and was very fit. All his sons were strong, athletic men. Keith had a future in baseball, but gave it up for med school. He worked well with everybody and was thought to be the perfect doctor material. It's just so sad. Roger was used to their schedule. Therefore, he was surprised when he found the front door locked. He reached up and used the spare key kept over the door. The house was silent, dead silent. There were no answers to his hello. He was sure they must have been off somewhere, so he checked the garage. Their cars were still there. Passing through the kitchen, he noticed that there were groceries still in the bag. None were perishables, but it was odd. He then went down the hall. The door to the master bedroom was open, but again, surprisingly, the door to the spare bedroom in which they slept was closed. Roger opened it. He almost closed it right away again when he saw the foot of the bed showed the bed was made, but then he noticed there were bodies under it. He went in, pulled the spread down a bit. He was shocked. Keith was purple. He had clearly been dead for days. He lay face down, his head turned to the left shoulder. There was no blood whatsoever, but he had been hit in the head. Patty was different. She was next to him on her stomach. Her face turned to the left as well. There was blood everywhere. The comforter and pillow had been drenched in it. She had been beaten to death on her head. Both were still in their nightclothes. Roger stumbled out of the house and called the sheriffs. The dispatcher told him to sit in his car and wait. For years, little came about the Harrington double murder. Mostly, even to this day, what is known has come from Roger Harrington. Roger, of course, didn't even pull the cover that far down, so he didn't know if Patty had been sexually assaulted or if they had been bound. She had, in fact, been raped. Both Keith and Patty had been bound with brown macrame cord. Okay, so again, we're seeing no shoelaces, guys. Because he's trying to sever those connections to East Area Rapist MO factors. But it had been cut and removed. Some of it was on Keith's lower back. This was odd. Both had been bound with their hands behind their back. Both had been bludgeoned with the bedspread over their heads. I find it interesting that he's leaving sections of the bindings behind. And I think this was one of those mysteries. People were like, oh, why is he doing that? I almost wonder if he was leaving sections of the bindings behind so that they would know it wasn't shoelaces and therefore not think it was the AR. Which is, it's kind of a weird logic. But in many ways it worked because it took forever for anyone to realize that the original Night Stalker was also the East Area Rapist. Both had been bound with their hands behind their back. Both had been bludgeoned with the bedspread over their heads. Therefore, after their assailant murdered them, he had taken down the spread, cut their bindings, and just let some fall where they would. He then covered them again. Peculiar. Yeah, that is really kind of weird. A little piece of brass was found embedded in Patty's head, but they never knew with what the couple had been beaten. The murder weapon had been taken. Roger had been putting in a sprinkler system, and there were a number of brass-covered metal sprinkler heads easily available in the backyard. Guys, it seems like 333A1 Cockleshell Drive is like always under construction. I think that there was even like some mild construction happening at the scene when I went there. Can't remember for sure, but again, there was no forced entry into the house. And I haven't seen the original house because it doesn't exist. So if there's a sliding glass door, that's probably your entry point. Mystery, pointless murder. That's what it remained until 1997. DNA would then confirm that EAR had been responsible. The same faceless night predator who had murdered the Smith months before and no doubt Offerman Manning months before that. I don't think that DNA is what confirmed EAR was responsible in 97. I think DNA confirmed that the ONS was responsible in 97, and it wasn't until 2001 or 2000 or so that anyone realized that EAR was also ONS. Now, there were some investigators that were hypothesizing that, but for that real confirmation that, okay, this is the same guy, that came years later. So really, DNA didn't confirm EAR had been responsible. It confirmed ONS had been responsible, even though it's the same guy. Thus, the scenario is this. EAR entered the home late at night or early morning. It had probably been on Tuesday, 2 days before, August 19th. He surprised them in their beds. He no doubt had Patty tie Keith. He took her to another room and raped her. He took her back and retied her. He told them to turn their heads to the left. He covered them with the bedspread. He probably stood on the right. Not sure why he assumes that, because doesn't have anything to do with witnesses, because he wasn't intending to leave any. He hit Keith once and killed him. Patty perhaps started screaming. One neighbor, whom Roger could not locate, had told another neighbor that she had heard screaming at a certain early hour. He then beat Patty far beyond what was needed to kill and silenced her forever. EAR left without ransacking or stealing anything, not even souvenirs or tokens. He took the bludgeon, whatever it could have been, and left. It's the sprinkler. No dogs were used to trace his scent. One cannot even fathom where he had parked. Actually, funny he should mention that. EAR appears to have parked very far away from this crime scene. If the bloody glove found at DeSoto and Taxco is actually associated with this crime, then it means he prowled like a mile to get from his parking spot to the crime scene. There's really nowhere for him to have parked. Having been there, I can tell you guys there is nowhere to park for him. You can't park along the street, I don't think. Maybe you could. I think there were some cars parked along Stonehill Drive, but I mean, it would surprise me if he parked his car right there, because it would make him more... So, and it also doesn't account for why there's a bloody glove found at Taxco and DeSoto Wave. Now, it could be completely unrelated to the crime, but investigators do believe that it was related to the crime. It would sort of fit with D'Angelo's usual attire, because he's not wearing latex gloves. He's wearing, leather gloves or like motorcycle type gloves, because they're much more durable. Not going to leave fingerprints that way. And I believe he's switching gloves at every crime. Once again, EAR had completely changed his MO. Actually, not really. Let's see what Quester says about that, because not really. His new modus operandi began with the Smiths. No forced entry. I don't think it was needed. I think he just went through the sliding glass door. It's fairly easy to do. I mean, if you have a sliding glass door in your house, test it for yourself. They're incredibly easy to untrack. No real ransacking, and thus no terrorizing in the old way with his victims. He merely must have awakened them in the same fashion and then took the women elsewhere to rape her. Now he had added murder. With the Harringtons, he added the pointless effort of cutting their bindings, apparently to take them, but he didn't do a great job. I don't think he was that inept. There's a reason the bindings are being left, and I think we haven't figured it out. Found new EAR attack, July 14th, 1978. Good work, Murder Inc. I'll open that up after this. Wow. Not surprising, but, there's something interesting about the way that he's cutting these bindings, but he's not actually removing them completely. He's leaving sections of them behind or pieces of them in other residences, things like that. We're seeing this as we go through. Like, we talked about the Offerman Manning, how there was pieces of twine found in the neighbor's backyard and pieces of twine found, of course, on Offerman's wrist. So I don't think that he's really trying to fully remove the bindings. I don't understand exactly what he's doing, but he seems to do this repeatedly. He's always leaving sections of the binding behind at the crime scenes, but removing a portion of it. One hypothesis that you could kind of go with is that possibly he's just trying to trick us because he wants us specifically to know that shoelaces were not used. And if shoelaces were not used, it's one less calling card to the East Area Rapist, and he's trying to disconnect the crimes. Don't know exactly why, but for some reason he does this over and over again. I don't think he's that stupid. I think there's another reason for that. It is not surprising that EAR had changed his MO. He knew murder was worse than rape. He was still getting his thrill, but knew he had to cover his trail better. There can be no link between these murders and his identity as EAR. He followed the news. He knew there was a newspaper ponder after the Offerman Manning attack. There were articles mentioning that there was some suspicion by a detective in Sacramento. After the Offerman Manning murder, he completely altered his MO. Not really. Wait till we get to wait till we get to the Withun, because I've said this 1,000 times, and I stand by it. The Withun crime scene is the field guide for anyone studying the modus operandi of the Irons. It's absolutely, it's like going to Fallujah while studying the techniques of house-to-house urban warfare. It's the absolute epitome. Or it's like going to Normandy, France to study the invasion of the amphibious invasion of beaches. It is textbook at Withun, but we'll talk about that when we get to Withun. He completely altered his MO, he says. This makes it seem certain that he intended to murder the Smith. He definitely did. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that when he went to the Smiths. Yeah, same. Here it is clear he intended to murder the Harringtons. Yeah, of course. It wasn't clear with the Offerman Manning murder. I think it was. I mean, I would be very, very... Again, this is a Goleta crime scene. It's not up north. It's I think things went a little sideways and he had to shoot them, but I don't think that he was going to leave Offerman and Manning alive. I suspect the AR toned down his soliloquy here. Maybe he put his ifs back in. The Smiths and the Harringtons didn't get as excited and didn't fight to get free as Offerman had. In any case, this was the second couple who did not get free or challenge him. Leslie D'Ambrosio was given this case along with the other Night Stalker murders in order to evaluate a profile for the assailant. She felt that together the assailant was perfecting his modus operandi. Yeah. By the time... So, next crime that we're going to talk in the next video after this one, probably tomorrow or the next day or something like that. And guys, I'm very eager to do the Withun video on this because I have so much to say at that crime scene. Probably more. It's kind of my, to me, is the epitome of an original Night Stalker attack. And I think that by the time he gets to within Irvine 81, you're going to see the perfection of this modus operandi. So I agree with Leslie D'Ambrosia. I think Leslie D'Ambrosia said a lot of smart shit. And we can read that profile, too, if you guys want, after we cover all these Quester breakdowns. He was removing the bindings now in order to make these attacks look like a botched burglary. I don't agree with that. Did D'Ambrosia say that? Because I'll put a note that we need to talk about the D'Ambrosia profile. Yeah, I don't know about that. If so, EAR was rather inept at it for leaving some behind. That's what I'm saying. I don't think he was this stupid. Now, it's possible that he was this stupid. But again, look at the track record. Look at how long he was able to get away with all this crap. I think it shows a very smart, very organized offender. And to bring up with Thune again, by the time you get to Irvine 81, you're going to see this guy's a tactician. He's the special forces of serial killers. It was also obvious that the woman was beaten far more than necessary, and the man, like Lyman Smith, hit only once. Nothing was stolen. I think that's interesting. I can't account for that either. Of course, he's going to break that pattern when we get to Sanchez Domingo, which I already did the video for. So if you want to move forward in time a little bit, that video is already up. Moreover, there was also another bruise on Patrice Harrington. It was a circular contusion on her shoulder. D'Ambrosia was told it was consistent with a bite mark. None of this could be promoted as the result of a burglary gone bad unless EAR thought the police were complete idiots. When was Bundy convicted? Because he was convicted on the strength of bite mark evidence. So it's very strange to me that D'Angelo would leave a bite mark behind. And to really creep you guys out, it's possible that it was not actually his teeth. Not like it's a dead body's teeth or something, but I mean, imagine you go and break into a dentist's office and steal their little denture things and then use them to throw everybody off. So that, because he had to have known about the Bundy conviction, and I would be very surprised if he was going to leave tooth mark evidence behind. None of this could be promoted as a result of the burglary gone bad unless EAR thought the police were complete idiots. And, I mean, after the Smiths, how can you blame him? Guys, I look at, like, the last thing that we talked about, last crime we did, was Ventura with the Smiths. Absolute train wreck. The police completely botched their investigation and made total fools out of themselves, as I mentioned in the previous video. And I wouldn't fault him for thinking that. I mean, it was his previous crime. So he's going from the Smiths to the Harringtons. And the Smiths investigation was a total fucking nightmare. I think Ons knew that. D'Angelo. D'Ambrosia thought that EAR was rather intelligent. I agree. And Quester says, but frankly, I don't see it. Well, I think part of what's going on, Quester, is that your interpretation of the facts is not correct. We have to be... We should give an honest sort of analysis of these things. I think he was a lot smarter than Quester is... giving him, quote, credit for. And after seeing and kind of breaking down with you guys some of the stuff that Quester's been saying on this site, I think he's good at giving you the EAR information because there were survivors and we know what happened. As soon as it gets to the original Night Stalker phase and there's no survivors and there is no account of what the hell happened in this house and we have to piece together what happened inside these houses based upon the forensic evidence and the limited facts available to us, I think Quester's entire ability to do analysis of these crimes starts to break down. But he's great at covering them. In putting all the EAR cases together, it seems more or less as if EAR was learning as he went along, including some very basic things an intelligent villain should have already considered. Now, we've talked about this. Murder Inc. and I have talked about this a lot. Like, let's see. Beating Lyman and Charlene Smith without first covering them was a bloody mess, and D'Ambrosia suspected that EAR had gotten blood on him. Here at the Harringtons, he covers them first. Should it really take bludgeoning in person to convince anybody that this is a messy way to kill? Well, let's hold the phone for a second, Quester, because the assumption here is that he bludgeoned the Smiths, he didn't cover them, he realized that was messy, and then he begins covering the victims to reduce the mess to himself. That's That's the hypothesis. What that hypothesis doesn't take account for is that there might be other reasons he's covering his victims. We just don't know. We can't ask him. He won't tell us. And we can't ask the victims because they're dead. So we have to try to figure that out. And sometimes when you try to figure stuff out with a predetermined conclusion or a predetermined framework, you set yourself up for failure. All of us in Iran's community for at least a long time have been operating with the framework and the assumption that the covering of the victims was to prevent the mess from getting on him. And therefore, the Smiths must have been his first bludgeoning murders. What if there's another framework that we don't understand yet? For those of you who haven't seen the video, or I don't even know where it is at this point, I think it's in the Sanchez video and whatever, but I hypothesize a couple of other ideas or a couple of other frameworks, not telling you that they're correct, not saying that it's my way makes more sense or it's right or it's wrong or any of that stuff. But here's another reason. The Smiths were beaten to death with firewood. It doesn't get slippery. It doesn't really, and he left the murder weapon behind. So it doesn't really matter if it has blood on it, right? But everyone after that crime was bludgeoned to death with like metal instruments. For example, here at the Harringtons, he uses a sprinkler, which is metal. At Withune, he uses what we believe to have been a lamp, which is metal. At Sanchez Domingo, he uses a lawn plugger, which is metal. At Cruz, he uses a pipe wrench, and that's metal. So all of these items can become slippery when there's blood on them. And it's possible that he wanted to not have a slippery bludgeon when he was beating people to death. The other possibility is that because he begins removing murder weapons from the scene after the Smiths murder, he doesn't want to put something, say, in his pocket or be seen carrying it if it's soaking in blood and brain matter. So it's possible that the victims were not covered because he was trying to not make a mess of the scene. It's possible he was covering them so as not to make a mess of the weapon or himself. Because the weapon was left behind at the Smith scene, it doesn't necessarily indicate that, or it, he had no real reason to worry about whether or not the firewood had blood in it. First of all, firewood won't become slippery with blood, I don't think. We could do an experiment to test that. I don't think it will. I think it's a porous enough object, it won't get slippery. And he also left it behind. So we're working with a framework, and our framework is possibly erroneous. And if that framework is erroneous, then whether or not the Smiths were covered and the subsequent victims were not covered doesn't actually tell us whether or not this was his first bludgeoning murder anymore. It invalidates that sort of reasoning. So look at the way that Quester approaches this with a framework. Same with even D'Ambrosia, but D'Ambrosia was only spitballing ideas, and D'Ambrosia was spitballing ideas at a very, very early phase of this. D'Ambrosia didn't understand even that some of these other crimes were associated with the same offender that her report was about. It'll be interesting to read that report with you guys, actually, and we're going to. So, when EAR began in Rancho Cordova, he put a bird bath under the phone line leading into the house from the power pole. He stood on it and tried to cut the wire, but failed. After he gained entrance, he forgot to even cut the phone line. Now, in this case here, if EAR was trying to make it look like a burglary gone wrong, he failed miserably by dropping the bindings after he cut them off. See what's going on here? He says when EAR began in Rancho Cordova. EAR did not begin in Rancho Cordova. Now, possibly in some way, but what he's specifically referring to the June 18th rape in 1976. He's specifically referring to the start of the East Area Rapist phase. Well, D'Angelo didn't get started as the East Area Rapist. D'Angelo got started as, before that was the Visalia Ransacker, and before that was probably the Cordova Meadows burglar, and before that only God knows. But this guy's been offending for a long time, and so we're seeing these strange clues that pop up that appear to show adaptation patterns and learning through evolution, but they're actually invalidated by the known retrospective facts that we have now. Like, let's look at, for example, I'll give you a perfect example, and it totally fucked with Paul Holes, and it tricked him, just as it was designed to. Okay? As the Visalia Ransacker, D'Angelo wore Converse All-Star shoes, and he did it on purpose because they're silent when you walk, or can be, and they're lighter weight. Then in the first several East Area Rapist attacks, he starts wearing big clunky hiking boots, but then switches to tennis shoes. And the assumption that was drawn by the investigators was that this offender was not a prowler who knew what he was doing. He started with boots, and he realized that those were loud, they were bulky, they were problematic for him, and so he switched to tennis shoes. But hold on. Because as the Visalia ransacker, he already knew that. So he's falsifying evidence of learning adaptations. It's very subtle and it's very clever. And so for Quester to say, frankly, he doesn't see the intelligence behind that, because Quester is blinded to it. It's very, very clever, you guys. It's mind-blowingly clever. It's such a subtle thing to come up with. It's scary how brilliant that was from his perspective of going, I'm going to trick them into thinking that I've only just started prowling, and I'm going to do it by starting with boots and switching to tennis shoes. And Quester fell for that, and so did Paul Holes. This tricked a lot of people. What if that's the exact same thing we're seeing with the bludgeonings? We don't know. We don't know what the answer is here, what the solution is. We're going into things with these frameworks, and sometimes we're getting tricked by them, and sometimes we're playing directly into the hand of the East Area Rapist by getting tricked in the ways he wanted us to get tricked. And what if that translates over to the bludgeoning? I'm starting to become a lot more open to this stuff, guys. I know Murder Inc. is happy about that. Can't know that was intentional. Can't know what was intentional. Nice, Paulie. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, you can hit them both. The last one was only an hour, so. This one will be maybe a little longer because I've been to this crime scene, but it's late at night, kind of, so I'm going to kind of get through things. And I also don't want people to discover this playlist and then realize that, like, the first half of each video is me covering the crime, and then the rest of it's, like, me free-forming with the chat, because we can do that anytime. But, see, Quester is just not catching it. And you can't blame him, because the EAR was doing really fucking smart shit. Guys, that's really smart. To start with hiking boots and switch to tennis shoes so that no one realizes you were the Visalia ransacker and that you already knew that lesson. He was falsifying the appearance of learning lessons as he went. And I think that the bludgeoning can very well be that trick too. So I'm starting to get a lot more open-minded about other crimes. Unconfirmed crimes, because I don't want to fall into that same framework, because that's what people on Reddit do. They just fall into a framework because they heard it repeated 1,000 times. I don't want to be like that, and I don't want to convey that type of... I've done it before. I don't want to convey that type of information to you guys, and then, especially not knowingly. So I'm being transparent about these, and I'm open to any... I mean, dude, he could have fucking killed David Taylor. I don't know, man. EAR was a proficient... prowler and cat burglar, but when he became a home invasion rapist and then murderer, he learned as he went along and really didn't anticipate some things that a clever mind would have. Actually, he might have. Here's the fucked up part. When he became a home invasion rapist and then murderer, he learned as he went along. No, he appeared to learn as he went along, and that's a very major distinction. We know that he did that because we saw him do that between Visalia ransacker and East Area Rapist and the tennis shoe issue. The tennis shoe issue is proof in the pudding that this guy was appearing to learn as he went along. And there is a very big difference. So, Quester says he really didn't anticipate some things that a clever mind would have. Maybe he did. Maybe not only did he anticipate them, but he falsified the appearance of not anticipating them to trick you into thinking that he didn't anticipate them. Okay? EAR, however, left a clue here at Dana Point. Okay, this is where Quester's going to be dead fucking wrong because he's never been to Laguna Niguel. I lived there. I can tell you this for sure. I know for a fact. EAR, however, left a clue here at Dana Point. He completely altered his prowling modus operandi as well. There is nothing, repeat, nothing of his tactical MO. Not true. Not true. There are no cats, no canals, no fields or parks, no schools, nothing. Okay, not true. Just wrong in every possible way. Not only is there still a gigantic canyon, I can show it to you. It's basically the entire Wood Canyon Trail, and it runs right past my childhood home. I go in there every day, and it empties you out at Salt Creek Beach, basically. So it's right by Dana Point. And off of that is like an infinite maze of bike trails. So Quester showed up here at this neighborhood, looked around and went, I don't see the trails. Therefore, they're not there. No, they're there. You just didn't see them. Because here is, watch my video, Crime Scenes of the Original Night Stalker, Laguna Niguel, California. When he was there, he's actually showing us the sophistication of the same MO, because now the bike trails are harder to find. It's more camouflaged. It's more clandestine here, but they're still there. And not only that, this was something that was pointed out to me because I kind of failed to understand the totality of the development that happened by Dana Hills High School in the time since this crime. This is 1980. Now, there's a bunch of neighborhoods there. They were not there in 1980. It was all open fields. It was no man's land. So, no fields or parks. The entire thing was a field in 1980, guys. The whole place was all a field. There was nothing there. Yeah. Only in his very first strikes did EAR rely on nothing but his silent stalking. There is one place to park on Stonehill. I mean, yeah. I don't think that he parked on Stonehill because we still have to get around the issue of the bloody glove at Taxco and DeSoto Way. Or is it Taxco Way and DeSoto? Anyway, doesn't matter. Taxco and DeSoto. There's still the issue of the bloody glove found at Taxco and DeSoto, which is like a mile north of this crime scene. I don't think he parked on Stonehill. I think he parked really, really far away and walked that entire distance or rode his bike. And there are bike trails. I mean, if I have to pull it up on Google Earth to show people, I can, but just check it out. In fact, go on Google Earth and pull this crime scene up, 33381 Cockleshell Drive, and what you'll see is... it'd be nice to have some paper up here, but whatever. Let's see if I can do this for you. I think this has worked previously. Let's see what happens. Yeah. Switching boots to sneakers to trick cops. Exactly, Murder Inc. Isn't that mind-blowing? It's fucking mind-blowing, man. It's so clever. It's like scary clever, guys. Seriously. Let's see what you can see here. All right, so here basically is the crime scene at Cockleshell Drive, right? Way up here and to the left is a gigantic canyon, and it runs past a place called Soka University. Not sure if you can see that on there, but just go look at it on Google Earth. I believe that's how he discovered the area, and I believe that he used the ancillary bicycle trails from there to get to Cockleshell Drive. But it's awfully exposed, and it would be awkward to walk back with a bludgeon. Yeah, this is something I've always thought was weird. He must have been concealing them in his like shirt sleeves and stuff. Like a sprinkler, I could put up my shirt sleeve. A fucking a lamp, you could hold it in a jacket or something. Like it's things like that. Or it might have been concealed in the clothing, and if it's concealed in the clothing, he doesn't want it to be covered in blood because then it gets blood on his clothing. And so that might explain why he starts covering. So it's a whole framework. We might just not know why. Ostensibly, he would walk down the embankment and throw the sprinkler head into the bushes. Maybe, or maybe he would keep it because it's not covered in blood. He could ride his bike along Niguel shores to the beach and get over a fence, but I doubt he did that. Yeah, no, I don't think he did that either. I think because, are we talking about the Taxco and DeSoto glove at all, or does Quester just ignore that? Keep going. Nothing says EAR here, yet he must have stalked the community silently, struck silently, and left without any trace. How did he find it, and what tempted him to come here? Nothing says EAR here? Everything says EAR here. We have 2 bound compliant victims beaten to death in their beds in the middle of the night on a corner house, 1 row of houses away from the street, which is covered by vegetation and surrounded by bike trails and a canyon. It's totally the East Area Rapist. You understand? Roger Harrington was sure that someone in Patty's background had killed him. Again, they're doing that bullshit again, where everyone wants to blame the so-called slutty female victim, all this crap. It's not true. It's very annoying. He thought that perhaps she had stumbled onto a drug deal at the hospital. Okay, stop with that stuff too, guys. Every time someone gets killed, it's not a drug deal gone wrong. Can we close that up? I've been to thousands of drug deals. I never saw anyone get beaten to death at them, okay? That's it. What the fuck is this, Breaking Bad with Tuco? It doesn't happen like that. Like, sometimes, yeah, but it's usually other factors. Perhaps I've never seen it, and I've been to countless drug deals. Perhaps she was home alone, and Keith stumbled in and was taken by surprise. Hello, BB. Roger even thought that because the bedspread had been pulled up, that the person who murdered them had suddenly regretted it and was ashamed.
Crazy.
What is it? Let's see if they can see you. You look like that.
I'm watching this crazy movie called The Influencer.
Oh,
It's
no.
really good. I just sent a 2-minute audio message to my best friend describing the plot.
Love you.
Okay, I hear now.
Okay, you close the door so we don't hear the movie in the background get sued by Hollywood. Here come Hollywood coming to sue us.
But I need to pee.
Okay. Roger even thought that because the bedspread had been pulled up, that the person who murdered them had suddenly regretted it and was ashamed. Far from being the act of regret, it was the cold, calculating, logistic act of reducing spattering. Okay, so we're doing it again here. What? It's okay. We're doing this again with the framework of trying to understand why. No, dude, I don't like Discord at all. I can't even get in. Like, everybody wants me to be in Zodiac Discord all the time. They're like, hey, can you come back to the Discord? And I can't do it, man. I don't like it. It's like trying to it's like computer hacker chats. It reminds me of when I was, like, obsessed with Anonymous and doing all the IRC crap with those guys. And I thought I was, like, cool for it, but now I'm just so far past that I have nothing to, like, LARP in my life anymore. And so I can't do Discord, man. At all. I hate it. I don't like the whole GUI of Discord is a nightmare to me. But let's move on. So we're doing this framework thing. Far from being the act of regret, it was the cold, calculated, logistic act of reducing spattering. Maybe. Or maybe it was something else. We don't know because D'Angelo won't tell us and nobody's alive who was there. It also gave the finder a shock, for certainly EAR removed the covers again, cut the bindings, and then made the bed over them again. It was quite intentional to cover them. He must have delighted himself in imagining the finder pulling the covers down. I agree with his assessment there. I think that's probably what was going on. We know he liked horror movies because we know who he was now. He was Joseph D'Angelo. We know he liked Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We know he liked bloody, gory movies with shock value. And I think that's probably what he was doing with the Harringtons and the other one. No, there was no regret, but was there some contact in the past? How did EAR stalk this area and why? Okay, great. Great thing to mention here is that people often, before this guy was identified, they were saying that because this was a gated community, that EAR must have known Patrice Harrington already, and he couldn't have discovered the crime scene through prowling. I found out that that's not true. In fact, I have some case files here for you. Let's see. Kind of hit this here. Was there some contact in the past? I have at least one Harrington prowling report, I think. There might be more. Let's see. Goleta Prowler. Okay, check this out. Is this the first? Okay, here, let me give you a couple strange reports. Right here. Case file original Night Stalker, prowling, stalking, reconnaissance activity. Date and time, approximately August 12th, 1980. So when did this murder happen? August 19th, I think. Yeah, August 19th, these two were killed. So this is a prowling report from 1 week prior to the crime. Incident summary. About a week prior to the murders, a neighbor awoke to her dog growling. She tried to wake her husband up. His response was, "We live in a gated community. Don't worry about it." She went to check what the dog was growling at in the living room, where she noticed her what the dog was growling at in the living room, where she noticed her sliding glass door was open and immediately retreated to her bedroom. As she did, she saw a man running out of the side gate toward the front of the house and down the street towards where the Harringtons lived. Suspect description is long, shoulder-length, dirty blonde hair. That's where another one of our weird EAR with long hair reports is going to come from. Notes and observations I put, this isn't the first prowling report from the Harrington murders that I could find. It supports my hypothesis that the Harringtons were randomly selected through prowling. No, I don't think he knew Patrice Harrington. He may have followed Keith from Irvine, we're not sure, but what we do see, in fact, is that there's evidence of prowling and stalking behavior in Laguna Niguel at least a week prior to this crime. So I don't think he knew them. I think he found them the same way that he always found people, prowling their neighborhood. And because people aren't from Laguna Niguel like I am, they don't see the bike paths and the canyons that are there. It's a lot of them. The whole place is fucking woods and canyons and trails. It's all of it is like that. But if you arrive at this crime scene by car, and you're exploring South Orange County by car, you don't see the trails. You have to know where to look, and you have to get out of your fucking car. So I think Quester just didn't do that. He just doesn't understand that there's trails all over this place. Case file, original Night Stalker, unformatted information report, associated ONS incident is Keith and Patrice Harrington. Key summary. A 1977 victim of the East Area rapist in 1980 moved to a residence near the intersection of Street of the Blue Lantern and Selva Road, or Blue, we call it, where I'm from, we call it Blue Lantern, Golden Lantern, Blue Lantern, whatever. In Selva Road, about 1 mile southeast of 33381 Cockleshell Drive, where the Harringtons were murdered on August 19th, 1980. I wrote, observation, there is very little chance that this is coincidental. If D'Angelo was stalking this 1977 victim, he could have parked along or near Stonehill Drive, then prowled a walking path that runs along Marlins Pike Drive towards Selva Road. Okay, so I didn't know. I hadn't been there, so... yeah, these are things that I wrote before I actually went to the crime scene and got an understanding of what I was talking about. But what I can tell you is that this is another connection to EAR that we see in the area, but not actually at the house. So we're seeing connections to the general area. We're seeing a prowling report from the neighborhood, connections to another victim nearby, this kind of thing. I wrote, it is... okay. That's probably irrelevant. It is far more probable that the Harrington couple was selected in the usual way through EAR-type prowling and surveillance. This is almost a year ago I wrote this one. I found that prowling report November 17th, 2024. So, and I know Murder Inc. knows a lot more other activity. KNR says security guard, he was stalking the neighbor. Yeah, I don't know who it was. It could have been Joe and Sharon. I just don't know. It's conjecture. But what we can see here is that I don't think he knew the Harringtons. I think he found them by prowling their neighborhood, which is how he always did. D'Angelo basically was always prowling neighborhoods, and that's how he would target neighborhoods first, victims second. Location first, victims second. That's the rundown. It was so far from his pattern. Not really. But Sandy Cook had said something. Roger had hired Harry Block, a PI, to look into Patty's past. Sandy Cook was Patty's old roommate. When the new relationship with Keith swept Patty off her feet, she moved out. The relationship with Sandy had somewhat soured. A reason is not given. But Sandy recalled 2 encounters that Patty had had. One was with a stranger when she put the garbage out. She had also had a run-in with a jogger. Interesting. When? When did these occur? So, naturally, for those who have followed this case, this is quite interesting. We know EAR posed as a jogger when stalking some prospective communities. He wore a jogging outfit and sometimes a black knit watch cap. I don't think it was a watch cap. I think it was a ski mask. Because you can disguise... show you. Let's get into the weeds here with a little experiment. You guys know in New Coke, so you like to do experiments. So if I can find my jacket, should be cool. I don't even know what pocket's what at this point. Let's see. Oh, by golly. New Coke has a ski mask on. Oh, by golly. But I'm doing this to demonstrate a point. Let me show you. Oops. Always happens, but it's better than breaking your headphone cable when you do the same thing over and over again. So let's see what's going on here. Okay, check this out. Watch cap? Was it a watch cap? Yes, baby. I'll be there soon.
There's a Bigfoot movie.
We'll be there soon. So was it a watch cap? I don't think so. I don't think it was a watch cap. I think it was this. You see? Now, a little hard to do with glasses on. But, no, I don't think it's a watch cap. I think that's the disguise. It's a ski mask. Because a rolled up ski mask looks exactly like a watch cap. Let's continue. The trouble is, I don't know where these... What? Oh, thank you, baby. I was wondering about that. The trouble is, I don't know where these incidents occurred. Did Patty tell Sandy of these after she moved with Keith to Cockleshell? Or did this happen when they lived together at some apartment or house? If the latter, how did EAR follow Patty to Cockleshell? If he did, this was quite elaborate stalking to get a single victim. He would do that. But I don't think he did, because, again, we're seeing prowling reports, we're seeing reconnaissance activity in Laguna Niguel before the Harrington crime. Even to the point where we have a 1977 victim of the East Area Rapist moved to the area. So I think he discovered her while prowling the area around Cockleshell. I don't think it happened before she moved in. D'Ambrosia underscored that the women were obviously the ultimate target. The force used to kill them was unnecessary. This was also contrasted with the minimal force used to kill the men. Is that really the case, though? Because he's killing, so far, he's killing the male victims with a single blow. But he's not killing, like, he's killed Lyman Smith and Keith Harrington with one hit. He's not doing so with Charlene Smith and with Patrice Harrington. It's taking him multiple blows. So, kind of makes you wonder, kind of introduces some doubt into that concept. I would very, very strongly caution people against calling that minimal force. These people are being hit so hard that it's one time and they're dead. You know how hard you have to hit someone for that? It's insane. No hesitation, no pullback. So, D'Ambrosia thought they had been killed before the women were even raped. Okay, let's continue. Let's see. We're going to read the D'Ambrosia profile on an episode after we cover all these murders. So, evidence reveals that the male victims were likely eliminated prior to the sexual assault and murder of the female victims. Keith Harrington was struck in the head with a blunt instrument. A crime scene assessment indicated that scratches and chipped wood on the headboard were likely made when Keith Harrington was struck in the head. A wood chip was discovered in the bed sheets between Patrice Harrington's legs. The location of the wood chip would suggest the theory that Keith Harrington was struck first. Because this happened in the Harrington case, it is likely that the offender struck and killed the male victims first in all the cases. I don't know. Maybe. But here's the thing. It doesn't mean that they were eliminated prior to the sexual assault. It just means that the rape could have happened, and then the male was killed, and then the female was killed. That's a faulty conclusion to jump to. This would explain why no gags were found and why EAR never feared that the man would call out after he left the room with the woman or during the aggressive raping. Maybe they're gagged with something that's not there, because look at this. However, D'Ambrosia also was told that there were marks and scratches around the mouth of the victims. They could have been slapped or struck prior to being killed, she speculated, but there is another answer. They may have been gagged and EAR took the gags with him. The marks may have been from the gag. I think it's that. More specifically, guys, I think that torn strips of towels are being used as blindfolds and gags, and he's removing these because that is the same technique that he used as the East Area Rapist, and he doesn't want people to know that the original Night Stalker is also the East Area Rapist. It is hard to imagine that EAR went through the awakening and binding routine just to kill the man shortly thereafter. He could. This is the problem. Quester needs to stop imagining a little bit, because he jumps to like very definitive conclusions that I think are just really not supported. Maybe It's hard to imagine the AR did that. How? What do you mean imagine? Who knows what the fuck? This guy's beating people to death. We don't know what the fuck he's doing. He's a weirdo. He could just have hit the man while he slept and then awakened the woman. Then there is the possibility of... No, because that would wake her up. See what I mean? See, Quester... No. No, Quester. Then there is the problem of the woman's reaction to knowing her man is dead. She might pass out or go into shock. I mean... Here's... Guys... Not necessarily, okay? People see people get murdered all the time and they're still awake and conscious. In fact, sometimes they're just scared. This might not make her any worthy object to terrorize. I disagree. EAR could have gone back to the bedroom after removing the woman and then hit and killed the man. Thus, the woman would not know her spouse had been murdered. I don't know if that's ever supported because we constantly hear reports of screams. And it's just... Yeah, I don't know, man. There is the problem of that wood splinter. It really doesn't support D'Ambrosia's theory. If Keith Harrington were alone in the bed and covered with the bedspread, how could a wood chip get under the covers and on the sheets? However, if EAR killed them together in the same bed, then when he pulled down the covers to remove their bindings, the wood chip, having been on a pillow or on the top of the spread, might have come down and fallen between her legs. Guys, you never know where the fuck things are going to end up, man. Oh my god, Polly Walnuts, you're crazy. Yeah, we're not going to watch that. Whichever the case, there was both cold, brutal calculation here and some clumsy and ignorant attempts to doctor the scene. EAR was learning his new MO and enjoying his new thrill. Cockleshell and Leeward. Okay, so can you see my cursor? Let me do this for you guys, because Quester again does this fucking annoying bullshit where he posts a picture of like 25 houses, and then he doesn't show us which house is the murder house, or the crime scene, as people on Reddit like to criticize me for. What the crud? Oh, there we go. Okay, so New Coke's logo is the cursor. New Coke's is on the crime scene. So that is the location of 3331 Cockleshell Drive, right there under the New Coke's logo. And you can see what I was talking about, that you can go across this street, through this yard, and then down, and this is Stonehill Drive, running right here along the right. This is Leeward, right here in the middle, and then Cockleshell goes to the left here. And then this is the house right here. Right where the New Coke's logo is now. So let's move that back up there. Keep it off the way there. Cockleshell and Leeward with Stonehill in the lower right corner. House has been rebuilt a couple times, I think. This is not... The house that you're seeing in this photo is not the same house that I saw, I don't think. But check my video out if you need to know what that house looks like now. Or did EAR go out of his way to attack this victim? His other two victims in the greater southern LA region were Irvine. We're not in the LA region, Quester, so can you not? Both Keith and Patty went to school and had lived in Irvine. Well, here's what I want to mention, okay? If you're in the medical industry and you live in South Orange County, you almost certainly work in Irvine. Irvine is... I don't know what it was like in 1980, but I can tell you what it's like now. It is all offices and like medical supply and scientific supply companies. It's all office buildings and commercial real estate. There are houses there. There are, obviously there's communities and neighborhoods there and stuff like that. But for the most part, almost all of Irvine is like science buildings and doctor buildings. It's like, where's the doctor building? It's in Irvine. So if you're a doctor, you're going to work in Irvine, basically. The strikes give all the appearance of heading south, but that would soon change. Yeah. So that's the Harringtons for you. I think it's just another quest. This is the thing, guys. Quester is going to do this a lot. So it turns out Quester Files articles are about an hour read. That's what I'm finding out right now, which is perfect for this segment. So let's close this up. Quester is not properly interpreting the original Night Stalker evidence. He's also not properly interpreting the East Area Rapist evidence. He simply isn't. We can see that because, like Murder Inc. says, tricking the cops with the shoe thing. This is both a thing that we understand because we're properly interpreting the evidence. Quester is falling hook, line, and sinker into the hand of the East Area Rapist and falling for the same tricks that EAR wants us to fall for. So, all this being said, this is the end of the Harrington segment. When we come back, which could be tomorrow, not sure, I'm hoping tomorrow. I would like to do it tomorrow because Withun is an exciting crime for me to talk about because I went there and I have a very thorough understanding of the environment, and I have a lot of insight in that crime for you. We're going to see what Quester says, because I haven't read. I think his Withun entry is really short. My Withun entry will probably be maybe the longest. I'm going to give you guys, man, I have another video, okay? It's called He Came from Slocum on here. And then I also have like numerous videos about Jeffrey Road, Bryan Avenue, and Slocum and Lewis, which are key areas of this crime scene. But we're going to cover that when we get to it. So next video is going to be Manuela Withun, and that's going to be an interesting one. So I'll try to kind of really get into the weeds for you guys with that. If you need... Look, guys, go on Google Earth and explore, man, because Quester didn't do it. If you can go to Laguna Niguel in real life, I recommend it. I recommend going to as many of these crime scenes as you can in real life. I've only been to 3, but my experience at each one was very educational. In fact, I need to go back to Laguna Niguel because I need to see the area of Taxco and DeSoto Way. Or Taxco Way and DeSoto, whatever the fuck it is. And I haven't yet. But there are trails everywhere at this crime scene. Okay? Live from a spinning ball, this has been the most banned prowler online. There's a thing I have to wait for.